My wife married me out of survival, and my own son erased me, choosing his mom's side for her rich boyfriend. He said nothing when I nearly died, and stayed silent when my mom passed. Now, 14 years later, I've rebuilt everything, and my entitled son showed up after her death. I sent him away. Now, my sister is pushing a forced reunion, claiming he's still my child. I was 20 when I found out she was pregnant. I remember staring at the bathroom counter, gripping the edges like it would stop the world from spinning. We'd only been dating a few months. We weren't in love. Hell, we barely knew each other. But I knew one thing, what it felt like to grow up without a dad. I wasn't about to do that to my kid. My name's Damon. I'm 38 now, living in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. But back then, I was a broke mechanic with grease under my nails and just enough pride to fake confidence I didn't feel. I married her the next week in a courthouse ceremony that lasted all of 12 minutes. No tux, no vows, no tears. Just two scared kids signing papers. She wore a blue hoodie and didn't even look at me when the judge asked if she said, "I do." I said it loud, like if I said it hard enough, it'd become true. The first few years were rough. Real rough. We lived in a tiny basement apartment on the north side. The kind where the pipes rattled every time the neighbor flushed, and mold grew behind the fridge no matter how many times I scrubbed it. I worked full-time at Samson's Auto Repair 10-hour shifts, 6 days a week, and took evening classes at Harrisburg Tech, chasing a pipe dream of becoming an engineer. I'd show up to class half asleep, smelling like motor oil, my fingers stained black. I always sat in the back. Nobody talked to me. I didn't mind. She stayed home with the baby, said she was too exhausted to work. I didn't push it. There wasn't time for fighting. We weren't a couple. We were cellmates. But the kid, that boy saved me. Nathan. He was the one bright thing in that dark place. I lived for Saturdays. I'd take him to Wildwood Park, strap him into the bike seat, and ride until he fell asleep with his helmet tilted sideways and his fingers curled in my shirt. Sundays, we'd play backyard cricket with a wiffle ball and a busted old broom handle, and at night, I'd carry him up the ladder to the flat roof, and we'd lie side by side looking at stars. He'd always fall asleep before he found the Big Dipper, but I'd lie there anyway, trying to make sense of the sky. She never came with us. I tried to pretend we were just two different kinds of tired. That eventually we'd learn how to speak the same language. But deep down, I knew. The only thing holding us together was that boy. Love wasn't part of the package. It was survival. Rent, food, daycare, repeat. No kisses, no conversations that weren't about bills or diapers. But I never missed a night tucking him in. I never stopped showing up. I wasn't going to be like my father. I promised myself that. Even if the marriage fell apart, I'd still be his dad. I'd always be his dad. At the time, I believed that meant something. It was a Thursday, mid-September. I'd gotten off early, some power outage at the shop. I didn't text or call ahead. Thought I'd surprise her. Maybe bring home Chinese and eat dinner like a real couple for once. I should have known better. When I walked in, the apartment smelled like garlic bread and cheap cologne. I froze just inside the doorway. The lights were low. There were candles on the kitchen table. And 2 plates. She didn't hear me at first. Her back was to the door, laughing at something he said. He was sitting in my chair, wearing some shiny button-down like he just stepped out of a cologne ad. He had that effortless smirk guys like me never quite pull off. Neither of them looked surprised when I stepped in. That's what hit hardest. She looked up, blinked once, and just said, "You're home early." No panic. No guilt. Just mild irritation, like I'd walked in during the last scene of her favorite show. I didn't say a word. I looked at the table. 2 plates. Wine glasses. Bread basket. He leaned back in his chair like he owned the place. "Hey, man," he said, like we were old friends. That was when I walked out. Didn't yell. Didn't cry. Didn't break a single dish. I just turned around, walked back out the door, and drove around until I couldn't feel my hands. Slept in the truck that night with the windows cracked and my jacket balled up under my head. The next morning, I filed for divorce. No confrontation. No explanation. I left the papers on the counter with a yellow sticky note. "You win." I asked for joint custody. She didn't fight me on it. At first, things were fine. Awkward, yeah, but manageable. I moved into a small 2-bedroom on the East End and set it up just for Nate. Got him a little desk, a rocket lamp, some posters of dinosaurs and planets. He loved being there. Called it Dad's Clubhouse. Every weekend, we made it ours. We'd build model planes, toss a football around, order too much pizza. I taught him how to check tire pressure and grill hot dogs. He laughed all the time back then. Big, full-belly laughs. But little by little, that started to change. He'd show up wearing new clothes, brands I couldn't afford. Talk about fancy restaurants and video games I'd never heard of. That guy Rick, she finally called him, took them to amusement parks, bought him an iPad, taught him how to fly a drone. I tried not to compete. Tried not to keep score. But I saw the shift. Nate stopped asking to stargaze. Stopped grabbing my hand when we crossed the street. He still came over. still smiled. But it wasn't the same. Like someone else had started rewriting my part in his life. And I was too tired, too broke, and too afraid to stop it. The first time it happened, I didn't think much of it. She texted that Nate wasn't feeling well and would skip our Saturday. Fair enough. Kids get sick. The next weekend, she said they had a wedding to attend. Then it was a school event. Then he has a lot of homework, or Rick's taking him skiing. A month went by. Then two. I started texting Nate directly. Sometimes he responded. Sometimes he didn't. I tried calling, but she'd answer, say he was busy, that he'd call me back. He didn't. I finally got fed up and called a lawyer. I still had shared custody on paper, but paper doesn't mean a thing when a kid just stops showing up. We filed a case for parental interference. I thought I had a shot. I'd never missed a payment, never missed a pickup, never laid a finger on anyone. I had calendars, receipts, even a notebook full of dates she canceled last minute. Didn't matter. The judge nodded politely, said it was a complex family dynamic, and ruled that maintaining Nate's emotional stability was more important than enforcing a rigid schedule. Outside the courtroom, her lawyer, some smug guy with a crooked tie and a Bluetooth in his ear, stopped me in the hallway. He handed me a folded piece of paper. If you want to save everyone some time, he said, you can sign this and walk away. She's willing to waive child support if you terminate your rights. I stared at the paper. Couldn't even unfold it. You think this is about money? I said, my voice hoarse. He didn't answer. Just walked away. A few weeks later, I got approved for a supervised visit. Just 1 hour at some sterile government office with cameras on the ceiling and a laminated poster of smiling cartoon parents taped to the wall. I sat on the couch with my palms sweating through my jeans. When they brought Nate in, I stood up too fast. He looked older, taller, thinner. His face was blank. Hey, bud, I said. It's been a while. He nodded but didn't sit. Just looked at the social worker, then back at me. I don't want to come here again, he said. The words hit like a slap. I blinked. What? He kept his eyes fixed on the floor. I don't want to do this. I don't want to see you anymore. I stared at him, waiting for the crack in his voice, the flinch, the hesitation. There was none. Did your mom? I started. No, he cut in. I just don't want this. I don't need 2 dads. Rick's enough. That broke something in me I didn't know was still whole. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. The next morning, I signed the papers. Name, date, signature. A few strokes of a pen, and I was erased. When I left the lawyer's office, my legs felt like jelly. I sat in my truck with the engine off and stared at the steering wheel. I used to hold that boy in one arm and a bottle in the other. I used to carry him upstairs when he fell asleep in the car. And now he'd asked me to disappear. So I did. After that, I unraveled. There wasn't some big moment where I decided to fall apart. It just started happening. Quietly. I stopped setting an alarm for work. Then I stopped going altogether. Told Samson I needed time to deal with family stuff. He said he understood, but I saw the relief in his eyes. I wasn't pulling my weight anyway. The apartment got quiet. Too quiet. That was when the bottles started showing up more often. At first it was a beer or 2. Then whiskey. Then whatever was cheapest at the corner store. Days blurred. Showers became optional. So did food. I stopped opening the mail. Let the bills pile up on the kitchen table like a slow, suffocating avalanche. Nobody called. My mom had passed a few years back, and my old man wasn't worth dialing. Friends drifted away one unanswered message at a time. Who wants to hang around a guy who smells like bourbon and doesn't say much? Some nights I'd stare at the ceiling, trying to remember Nate's laugh. Not the photos or the birthday cards I kept in a shoebox, his actual laugh. The way it sounded when he tried to whistle through a missing front tooth. It was gone. And something inside me started thinking maybe I should be too. The night it almost happened, I don't even remember drinking that much. I remember reheating a slice of pizza, watching a bit of some movie I'd already seen. Then nothing. Next thing I knew, I was on the floor. Couldn't breathe. My chest was heavy, my throat was burning. I couldn't move. My brain was screaming, but my body just lay there, limp. I passed out in my own vomit. What saved me was a Ms. delivered package. A neighbor, I think her name was Ruth, or maybe Ruby, had a box meant for me. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Finally let herself in with the super. She found me on the floor, barely breathing, eyes rolled back. The EMT said I was lucky to be found when I was. That if it had been an hour later, I wouldn't have made it. They called it aspiration pneumonia. I called it a wake-up call. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital, hooked up to wires and machines that beeped in the dark. The nurses were kind, but I could see it in their eyes, the quiet judgment. Another washed-up guy with a drinking problem and nothing left to lose. They were right. But one night, sometime around 3 a.m., I sat up in bed and looked around the room. My chest still ached from coughing, and my throat felt like sandpaper, but I was alive. Still breathing. I thought about Nate. Not the boy who told me to go away, but the one who held my hand when he was scared of the dark. That boy had a father. And maybe, just maybe, I still could be one. Someday. That's when I decided I wasn't going to die like this. Not bitter. Not broken. Not forgotten. Starting over doesn't feel like starting anything. It feels like staring at your own reflection and not recognizing the guy looking back. But I did it anyway. I left Harrisburg and moved 2 towns over to Mechanicsburg. Fitting, I guess. Rented a little place behind an old feed store. Got a job restoring vintage cars at a garage that smelled like leather and dust instead of motor oil and sweat. It wasn't glamorous, but it was quiet. Peaceful. Nobody knew my name, and that was fine by me. Part of my recovery was mandatory therapy. At first I hated it, sitting in a circle with strangers who cried too easily and clapped when someone talked about feelings. But I kept going. I talked. Not much, but enough. They gave me tools, and I started using them. I even joined a gym. Nothing crazy, just a couple mornings a week, pushing weights like I was trying to move the past out of my bones. Then one Tuesday at the library, I met Eliza. She was reading a parenting book with a coffee stain on the cover and muttering to herself like the pages were personally offending her. I chuckled. Rough chapter. She looked up and grinned. Only if you're raising a human tornado. We talked. She told me about her son, Luke, 11 years old, obsessed with space and homemade science experiments. She was a middle school teacher, divorced 3 years, moved to town for a fresh start. I knew that story. It was mine in different handwriting. I didn't rush it. We got coffee a few times. Then dinner. Then long walks where we didn't talk about anything heavy. We just existed near each other. That was enough. Meeting Luke made me nervous. I wasn't sure I remembered how to be around kids. But he made it easy. He was quiet at first, then asked if I knew how to fix a remote control car. Turned out the antenna was broken. We repaired it together on a Saturday morning while Eliza made pancakes. After that, I started coming by on weekends. We built things. A birdhouse, a potato cannon, a weird half-working robot that spit out Skittles. We laughed a lot. Real laughter. The kind I hadn't heard in years. Eliza never pushed. She watched us with this calm, sort of hope in her eyes. Like she was afraid to name what was happening in case it scared it off. I didn't say the word love for a long time. But when I did, it came out easy. We'd been together almost 5 years when Luke turned 18. We were at the kitchen table, eating brownies he baked from a box and pretending they weren't dry as sand. He handed me a folded envelope and said, "It's kind of dumb, but can you read it out loud?" Inside was a typed letter, short and neat. The last line said, "I know you didn't choose to be my dad, but I'm choosing you to be mine. Will you adopt me?" I didn't read that part out loud. I couldn't. I just looked at him, tears already falling, and nodded. He smiled, and I lost it. Ugly, shoulder shaking, can't catch your breath crying. He walked over and hugged me. It was the first time in my life I felt chosen. And for once, it was enough. It happened on the 4th of July. We were hosting a cookout in the backyard. Eliza had the grill going. Luke was manning the speakers with his girlfriend, some sweet girl who always brought too much potato salad. And my 2 little ones were running around with sparklers, chasing each other like it was their life's purpose. It felt like peace. Like the kind of life I never thought I'd get to live. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But I was expecting a call about a part for the '68 Mustang I'd been restoring at the shop, so I picked up. "Is this Damon Callahan?" "Yeah." There was a pause. "I'm sorry to tell you, but your ex-wife, Miranda, passed away yesterday. It was a car accident. She died on impact." I didn't say anything for a long time. Not out of grief, just out of confusion. Like someone had dropped a fact that didn't fit into my world anymore. She wasn't part of my life. Not for over a decade. "Okay," I said finally. "She listed you as her emergency contact years ago. It's probably outdated, but we had to call." I hung up. Didn't mention it to anyone. I didn't feel anything. Not anger, not sorrow. Just a void. Like staring into a hallway with no lights on. A few weeks passed. Then, on a Sunday afternoon, I heard the doorbell. Eliza was braiding our daughter's hair. Luke was helping the little one build a popsicle stick rocket on the porch. I walked to the door, expecting Amazon or maybe a neighbor dropping by. Instead, it was him. Nathan. Older now. Maybe 26 or so. Tall. Broad shoulders. A tight haircut that looked military or maybe just serious. He wore a dark polo and held nothing but a set of car keys. His eyes were calm. Watchful. "Hi," he said. "I'm Nathan." I nodded slowly. He glanced past me, toward the backyard. "I think I'm your son." I looked at him for a long moment. He had my nose. My jaw. That same tiny scar on the eyebrow from falling off a bike, once upon a time. But he wasn't my son. Not anymore. I stepped forward, gently pulled the door halfway closed, and said quietly, "No, you're not." He blinked. "I'm sorry," I added. "But you asked me to disappear." And I did. You don't get to knock and undo that. His face didn't change. No anger. No sadness. Just quiet understanding. He gave one small nod and said, "Okay." Then he turned, walked down the porch steps, and got in his car. I stood there until the engine faded into the distance. Then I turned around, stepped back into my house, and closed the door behind me. Behind me, my daughter was giggling at something Eliza said. Luke was holding the baby like she was made of glass. I smiled, just a little. The past had knocked, but I didn't answer. The next day, I told Eliza. We were lying in bed, the kids finally asleep, the smell of charcoal and sunscreen still clinging to our skin. "I didn't tell you yesterday," I started, staring at the ceiling. But Nathan came by. She turned to face me slowly. "What?" I nodded. Showed up at the door. Said he was my son. Her hand found mine under the blanket. "What did you say?" I said no. She didn't speak right away. Just rubbed her thumb along the back of my hand. That meant she understood. I told her everything. How he looked. How come he was. How I didn't feel hate or rage or even sadness, just finality. Like the door had been closed so long ago, I couldn't remember what it felt like to leave it open. The next morning, I sent out a group message to my siblings. Simple, short. "Damon, just a heads up. Nathan showed up at my house. No idea how he got the address. But it's done. He's not welcome here. Not now. Not ever. Please respect that." Most of them left it alone. My brother reacted with a thumbs up. But my sister, Leah, called right away. "I gave him your address," she said, before I even said hello. I sat down on the edge of the bed. "You did what?" "He showed up at my place, Damon. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He begged me. Said he just wanted to see you once." I couldn't say no. "You could have," I said, jaw clenched. "He's your son." "No," I said. "He was. And he made a choice. He made it clear. You were there when it happened. I was also there when you broke into pieces for a year straight," she said quietly. "I thought maybe seeing him would help. It doesn't." There was silence. "I told you what I needed," I said, more tired than angry. "And you went around me anyway. He looked like you. That doesn't mean he is me." She went quiet. "I'm telling you now," I said. "If you ever go behind my back again, if you contact him, or give him updates, or even bring him up to my kids, I'm done. I mean it, Leah. I'll cut you out like I cut him out." She didn't argue. She didn't apologize. She just whispered, "Okay," and hung up. That was the last time I heard from her. She stopped texting, stopped calling, sent a Christmas card that year, and signed. And just like that, I lost a sister. I told Eliza that night. She didn't say much, just curled into me and held on. I didn't feel guilt, but I did feel it, loss, all over again. Not regret, just the weight of one more name left behind. It was late when I finally turned off the lights in the garage. The kids had gone to bed hours ago. Eliza was curled up on the couch with a blanket and a book, probably asleep by now. The house behind me was quiet, warm, still. I stayed out there, wiping down the hood of an old Dodge I'd been working on for weeks. I didn't need to. It was already clean. I just needed to move, to touch something solid. The echo of Nate's voice. "I don't need two dads," still lived somewhere deep in my ribs, like it had burrowed in and made a home. Some nights it was louder than others. Tonight, it was quiet. Maybe because Luke had texted me earlier. "Look, early PT tomorrow. Love you, Pops." He always signed his messages like that now. Pops. He started it as a joke when he turned 19 and never stopped. Every time I read it, something in me softened. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and scrolled through old photos. Luke at 13, covered in glue from some science fair disaster. The twins holding frogs they'd caught in the backyard. Eliza smiling over a pie she swore was burned but wasn't. I paused on one of Nate. A real old one. Him in a Batman costume, standing on my shoulders, both of us grinning like idiots. I stared at it a long time. There was a time when I thought loving someone that hard would guarantee something. Turns out, it doesn't. It's not love that sticks, it's choice. Who shows up? Who stays? Who fights for the seat at the table when walking away would be easier? Nate made a choice. And so did I. People talk a lot about forgiveness like it's a virtue you're supposed to carry around and hand out like candy. But nobody tells you that sometimes forgiveness costs more than it's worth. I thought about my dad. How he disappeared before I turned 10. How I used to lie and say he worked out of town. My mom never corrected me. She just let the lie live so I didn't have to face the truth too soon. I thought about Leah. Her silence. Her betrayal. Her choice to give him that address like it was a kindness. I thought about all the people I used to call family, and all the ways they disappeared when I needed them most. But then I thought about this life I had now. The soft thud of little feet in the morning. The way Eliza's hand always found mine under the table. The sound of Luke's boots on the porch when he came home on leave. This was my family. And I didn't need to go back to prove anything. I looked down at my hands, still rough, still scarred, still mine, and realized something. I didn't need closure. I already had peace. And it was enough.